National briefing for the House Committee on Education, the House and Senate Committees on Human Services. Today's January 11th. We're in conference room 329. And we would like to start off with an introduction from Representative Justin Woodson.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. And so I want to thank everyone for being here today and those that are going to participate via Zoom later. You know, for Hawaii, there have been discussions about universal access to high quality early learning opportunities for really 20 plus years. But there was a meeting of the minds really that took place in 2019, and that led to action in 2020. And it was really a partnership between the Hawaii State Legislature, the Executive Office of Early Learning, Department of Human Services, the University of Hawaii, philanthropic and nonprofit and for-profit organizations. And we all came together as a state and as a collective community to create framework in which we were to set forth the goal of providing universal access to high quality early learning opportunities. And our goal is to do that by the year 2023. And so early on, there were discussions around how we were to shape those classrooms. And there was an idea that we should be individualistic to meet our families' needs. And so you'll see through our expansion efforts that there are very high quality pre-K classrooms that are embedded in our DOE schools. For those families that want a very traditional setting, some families might prefer more specialization. And you'll see that our charter schools, they offer very high quality Hawaiian language and Hawaiian medium classrooms for those families that desire that more cultural and linguistic induction. And then of course we have our preschools, in which there's a variety of them. And we offer through Preschool Open Doors grants for families to participate in those programs as well. Those are also very high quality. And so this structure, together with an encouragement of students to enter into the field, we have the Early Learning Educator Stipend Program, the University of Hawaii. We have other programs that encourage our students to enter into the field of early learning. That is very important, along with our fearless Lieutenant Governor working judiciously with the newly formed School Facility Authority to renovate and recreate spaces for high quality early learning opportunities. And so we have made a lot of great progress over the years. And at the conclusion of this year, we should be about 2/3 of the way of achieving our goal. That's ahead of schedule, and that is largely to do with the spearheading of our Lieutenant Governor, and we're grateful for her efforts. Now, that's not to say that we don't need to make adjustments. For me, I think most notably, we need to provide subsidies to our preschool teachers, and I hope there's going to be some meaningful discussions as to how we can do that. And I look forward to hearing from some of the other jurisdictions, like my friend Terry Collins from Alabama. She works well with NCSL, and she is a rock star legislator. And it's going to be good to hear from others as well. And so we look forward to a very fruitful briefing. And with that, I turn it back over to you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Chair Joy Sanborn-Ventura, who is the Chair of Health and Human Services in the Senate.
Okay, thank you very much, and aloha, and thank you for being here with us. We have learned that adverse childhood experiences lead to failure, lead to convictions, and the like. So conversely, positive early childhood experiences would lead to success. So I am super thankful that the legislature has expanded our early childhood education, as Chair Woodson has pointed out, to 3-year-olds. And I am super grateful that our Lieutenant Governor is spearheading the way to such positive experiences so that our keiki will succeed beyond that of what their parents have done and what we as a community want for our community. However, there are challenges, and that is why NCSL is here to teach us what those challenges are. We know that there's a shortage in early childhood education workers. We know that there's a need that part of it, of those shortages, is because they are underpaid, and despite the huge demand. And we're hoping that NCSL, our Lieutenant Governor, and our speakers will help us to teach us how we survive those challenges. As a small housekeeping matter, this is being streamed live on YouTube. So hopefully those who could not be with us at this time will be able to pull it up on YouTube, so that there will be questions and answers later on that our YouTube participants we may hopefully be able to participate in. I am sorry that my Senate colleagues are not present, but I'm sure that they are listening to us because it is being streamed live. So aloha, and thank you, Madam Chair, for having this.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, I would just like to say that I'm so grateful that we have today with us so many experts who have been working in this area for a very long time in our state, and that afterwards we will hear from some legislators or policymakers from New Mexico, from the District of Columbia, and from Alabama to get ideas from other states that have very similar challenges. I definitely have a district that is benefiting already from our advances in access to early child care, which is fantastic, and I can't wait for it to be standard, across our state. So with that, we would like to bring up our first speaker, and that is Lieutenant Governor Sylvia Luke.
Good morning and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
And first of all, let me just say congratulations to you, Chair Martin, for heading up the Human Services Committee. And then also congratulations to Vice Chair Trish LaChica for heading up, helping Justin, Chair Woodson with a very important task of taking care of our keiki. Just being in the legislature just until recently, I am just so thankful to all of you folks for all the groundwork that you have put in, especially Chair Woodson, Chair Kidani on the Senate side, Chair San Buenaventura, all the work that you folks have put in to ensure that our young learners have just as much opportunities as anyone else whose parents can afford to send their kids to preschool. The realities in the state of Hawaii is that half of our kids still do not go to preschool. And when people in the community and our advocacy groups have surveyed the parents who were not sending their kids to preschool, the top issue was affordability. And the second issue was accessibility. And accessibility and affordability continues to be a barrier and a challenge. And what we're trying to do is close those gaps. I'm going to flash this. And then this is something that you can get off our website as well. Because you have other experts in the room, for instance, Preschool Open Doors through DHS, they have done a tremendous amount of work and tremendous amount of successful work thanks to last year's efforts by the legislature by substantially increasing Preschool Open Doors subsidy for the first time in basically, I think, 12 or 9 years, going from $12 million to $50 million will allow so many more families the opportunity to send their kids to preschool. So I'm not going to touch upon that. I also will not touch upon a significant part of the great work by Executive Office of Early Learning. They have done a tremendous amount of work, and under the leadership of Yuko Arikawa Cross. She has been a true leader in leading the efforts to ensure that not just that we open more classrooms in an expeditious way, but that we are providing quality education to many of the kids who are going to these new schools. And let me just give you an example. In December, we had the opportunity to go visit some of the classrooms that we recently opened. And one of them was right in your district, Chair Martin, and you were there as well. And at Pope Elementary in Waimanalo, we sat through a classroom full of 4-year-olds where they were listening and having conversation and responding to questions that we were asking. And these are just 4-year-olds. And we both came back with an impression that these must be just cream of the crop kids that they were able to pick up from the community and plop into Pope. And turns out it wasn't true, because what has been consistent is that every school that we visited, all the principals and teachers have said, this is not the same situation we saw in August when we first opened up. In August, some of these kids were running around, the teachers couldn't hold their attention, and a lot of them were crying, and some of them, still had issues going to the restroom by themselves. But just in 4 months, they were able to sit there, listen to instructions, carry on a conversation, and be attentive. And can you imagine what a life-changing experience that will have for that individual kid when they enter kindergarten? Because now with the kindergarten assessment, we are expecting our kids to be ready to learn. And that's tremendous amount of pressure that we are putting on our 5-year-olds. So in as much as we can, if we can get leg up for our 4-year-olds and our 3-year-olds, we're making a tremendous amount of impact to kids. And you folks already know this, and that's why you are supporting these efforts. The other thing that is important about this initiative, and we launched the Ready KK initiative, as you know, just back in January of last year, and it has, with the partners in the room, we had tremendous amount of success being able to build out preschool. The issue about preschool is not about social justice. It's not just about allowing opportunities for parents who couldn't afford to send their kids to preschool, an opportunity to have free preschool opportunity. But the second component, which is very important to me, and it should be very important for other folks, is the opportunity for SPED kids to have an inclusive classroom. The state of Hawaii provides SPED opportunities for 3 and 4-year-olds, and many of the schools and classrooms around the state have special needs kids, and we're already teaching special needs kids. And it is very important, just like in the gen education from K to 12, that special education kids interact and intermingle with Gen X kids. And that's what inclusion study is all about, because then it not just allows for younger kids to learn from each other, but it allows for Gen X kids to grow empathy and sympathy for differences and opportunities to mingle and have an opportunity to have an inclusive classroom. And I know ultimately that was our goal as well. It's not about those things, but it's about all those other things that we're touching. I am going to cover just very shortly. The Ready KK initiative, a lot of times in the state, we tackle things in a linear way. And when I spoke to Pacific Century Fellows, I said the same thing to Vice Chair Trish LaChica. We tend to handle things in a linear way. We identify a problem and say, okay, we're going to solve it through this way. The Ready KK initiative, and thanks to the ingenuity of the legislature, the Ready KK initiative is about the multifaceted approach. It's not just about opening public preschools. It's to ensure that as we are opening public schools, we're not cannibalizing private facilities, and we're not just supplanting what's going on the private side, because the whole goal is to add seats, not cannibalize what's in the community. And some of these community centers are providing excellent quality education for our kids, so we don't want to do that. The other thing is, in as much as we want to build as many classrooms as we can, if we don't have teachers to fill those seats, then a lot of these classrooms will be empty. So for instance, let me give you an example. After we open 11 classrooms, because of the excitement about the news of all these openings, Nanakuli L reached out to Executive Office of Early Learning, and Nanakuli L all of a sudden had a wait list. They had 15 seats. They had a wait list. They had to turn down significant amount of parents. And then UCO, thanks to the leadership of UCO, working with SFA, working with all the Ready Keiki partners, said, you know what? If Nanakuli L has space, then we should try to fix up the one classroom that can only service 15 kids, expand that to have more kids in that one classroom, and add another classroom. We just opened Nanakuli L just after 2 months of construction, and because of the work of Yuko and Nanakuli L, they were able to cobble up enough money to fund a teacher. That may not be true for all the others that are waiting and being constructed. Thanks to the generosity of the legislature, you guys funded 44 classroom, 44 teacher and teacher's assistants for 44 classroom for the next cycle beginning August. But there are a few classrooms now that are being built that could have opened. And so those are the things that we're trying to avoid in the future. How do we anticipate how many we're going to open, make sure that we have money to pay for the teachers? Thanks to the generosity, again, from the legislature and our philanthropic partners, Castle Foundation and Kamehameha Schools, and also thanks to the Chaminade University, they had different stipend programs. I'm going to take a look, talk a little bit about the Chaminade program first. Kamehameha Schools has invested $1.5 million to give out 150 scholarship, fully paid scholarship for anyone wanting to go into early education or education teaching field. And we always thought, okay, it's going to be hard to recruit teachers because, you know, being a preschool teacher is underpaid and there's not too many people who want to do it. But within few weeks of announcing that Chaminade University with the financial backing of Kamehameha Schools was going to offer 50 free scholarships, 400 people applied. I know yesterday I said 250, it turned out to be 450. So that automatically proves that there are individuals who want to go in this field, but cost of education and cost of that access being a barrier to a lot of these folks who want to get into this field. So if by $1.5 million is kind of a small amount compared to the magnitude of how much we're investing in so many things. But the fact that 50 slots, 453 people applied, that is just even for myself, it was mind-boggling. And so what we will be doing is going back to Chaminade, getting more updates. Perhaps it's an opportunity for us to go and talk to other philanthropic partners and say, hey, there is a need and there are people who are interested in going in this field. If you look at the University of Hawaii is providing tuition waivers if you're taking education classes. So not completely full tuition free, but tuition waivers for education credits. Even for that, the success has been tremendous. For the amount that you folks invested, 91 applicants and applied just after launching in April. 91 applicants already applied and 63 people have been awarded. And so you can already see that there are people who are interested in getting in this field, and just a small amount of your investment went a long way in automatically recruiting all these individuals. I'm gonna stop with just one more point. I always like the term success is contagious. when you see the success of what you folks helped us build with the Ready Kiki initiative, with Preschool Open Doors, with Executive Office of Early Learning, the fact that the university systems have developed an opportunity for people to go to universities and get a early learning degree, all these things, when people hear about it, they get excited, and there are different opportunities come up. The last thing that had happened is I have participated in about 3 groundbreaking in the last, I would say, last 2 or 3 months. These 3 groundbreaking were all affordable housing units. Every single affordable housing units added a component of childcare. At the University of Hawaii, which is providing affordable housing for their junior faculty and graduate students, will have childcare facility embedded. In Kapolei, they had Kapolei Gateway, which is affordable housing, 400. It's probably the single largest LIHTC project, 400 units, affordable housing units out on the Kapolei side. It also had a childcare component. And the last one was thanks to the Bezos Academy and the generosity of the Bezos Academy, there will be an affordable housing unit right in Lahaina, which has free, this is completely free, preschool opportunities in a Montessori-style school for 40 special kids in Lahaina. So I'm going to stop there. And then I just wanted to thank you for this opportunity to present what we have done, what we have learned. And I want to just thank you folks profusely for your partnership and you continuing to work for all the countless amount of parents and kids. The little dividends and the little investments that we're making this year will pay dividends when they become the proud graduates of their various schools. And so we look forward to tracking them from now, tracking their records, tracking their progress, tracking their scores, tracking their graduation. And this is transformative, something that you are going to look back and say, this is something I had a say in these kids' lives. So I just wanted to thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Next, we have Yuko Arakaki from the Executive Office on Early Learning. Hi.
Hi, good morning. We have some slides that.
Yeah, did you want to introduce your colleagues first, if
Yeah,
that's all right?
absolutely. So, aloha, chairs and vice chair and representatives. I'm Yuko Ariko-Cross. I'm the director of the Executive Office on Early Learning. I'm here with Jordana Ferreira, my government affairs specialist, and we're going to be co-presenting with Department of Human Services. So, can you introduce yourself?
Good afternoon. I'm Stacy Tonouchi with the Child Care Subsidy Program.
You need to have the mic
little
closer
closer.
so that people on YouTube can hear you.
Thank you. Again, I'm Stacy Tonouchi with the Child Care Subsidy Program.
Aloha, I'm Dana Luca with the Child Care Regulation Program, and we're here on behalf of Director Betts.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. So we have a presentation that will be with a few slides, and then EOEL will speak first, and then Department of Human Services will speak after us. So we are all here because we believe in early childhood education and the promise that it brings to us. And we know that investing in our youngest keiki is incredibly important, as this is when the most incredible brain development actually happens. And so it lays the foundation for our language, behavior, social, emotional skills. And it's important to ensure that children receive the support for the development very, very early on. So the most important factors for children's growth and development lay in nurturing and responsive experiences that they're able to have. And this is what Lieutenant Governor was speaking about in terms of high quality. It's the engagement and the nurturing that the children receive at the spaces that they're in. And so we can go to the next slide, please. So when we look at the economic benefits, we know that there's a lot of returns on investment in terms of investing in our youngest children, both short and long term. We know that it's going to prepare our future generations, and we look forward to tracking and seeing their progress all the way through adulthood as well. But it also assists our current and our future workforce, and provides benefits to Hawaii's working families, allowing them to secure employment, to continue on their education, and to help enable their financial security for their families so that they can live and work and exist in Hawaii. It also bolsters our economy through jobs. So through extensive research and even by fairly conservative estimates, we know that every dollar invested returns about a $7 investment. And so we know that these costs result in reduced costs associated with remediation, criminal justice system, victims of crime, healthcare cost, and reduced reliance on government assistance payments. Next slide, please. In Hawaii, we have an array of options for young keiki and children. And so when you look up here on this slide, so when we say funding source private, what we're actually talking about, these are our community-based centers. Like, of course, families may accept state and federally funded subsidies, but these are predominantly our community-based centers. Then we also have federally funded programs like Head Start, early childhood special education. And then we have a state-funded preschool options, which also include EOEL public pre-K, charter school public pre-K. And one other thing to note in the federally funded section, we also have family-child interaction learning programs, which is a multi-generational approach where both caregiver and children are taught and learn together. And the Executive Office on Early Learning is happy to support two of these programs currently, one at Nanakuli Elementary School and one at Kailua Elementary School. Next slide. So when we look at what EOEL has been doing, and the Lieutenant Governor spoke to some of this when she was here. Let me come here. So last year, one of our top priorities was to expand EOEL public pre-K. And within a very, very short time frame, we were able to identify 55 sites that were interested. And we opened 11 of them early last year with the onboarding, the renovations, the hiring of teachers. We opened 11 early, and then we were able to open the first one mid-year, which Lieutenant Governor spoke about at Nanakuli Elementary School. And then we're going to be bringing on 43 additional this upcoming school year. What's really exciting is that this year we were able to welcome in 3 and 4-year-olds to our program. And that was something that aligns with the expansion of preschool open doors, opening up to 3 and 4-year-olds. And it also aligns with our charter schools that had already been hosting 3 and 4-year-olds. And so none of this would have been possible without the collaborative partnership of our Lieutenant Governor, our Department of Human Services, Department of Education, and of course the support and the investments from our legislators. Next slide. So I spoke about multi-generational programs, but within Executive Office on Early Learning, we also support many things besides EOEL public pre-K. We also support community providers. We support Department of Human Services and other folks in terms of trying to look at how are we supporting children from and families from pregnancy all the way to kindergarten entry age. And one of them is to really build and develop the family support system and multi-generational process through family-child interaction learning programs. And so we are happy to support 2 right now at Kailua Nanakuli Elementary School. There are 36 children and 30 parents taking advantage of this opportunity. And so we are renewing our support for these 2 programs currently through an RFP process. And we're also looking to add support for 2 more programs, family-child interaction learning programs, because we know stronger families equals stronger children too. Next slide. So one of the things that EOEL is looking forward to is we currently offer pre-plus contracts. And so the pre-plus contracts were created way back when there was Lieutenant Governor Mazie Hirono. And these are dedicated buildings on DOE campuses that supported children who fell within a specific income threshold. And currently they're all being operated by Head Start on DOE campuses. And so when we thought about this, we were thinking, how else can EOEL support the broader community? And so some ways that we can support our community-based providers, if we cannot increase, let's say, pay, can we decrease expenses? And so a lot of the expenses come from facilities or trying to look for facilities, and finding facilities in Hawaii is very, very challenging. So what EOEL is aiming to do, and what we're hoping, is that we can apply the same pre-plus contract similar model and expand it to early learning facilities, so that where we can take a look at other properties that may be available. For example, if we wanted to host preschools in libraries, or we wanted to host preschools on other vacant property that's within the state inventory that's around, that's currently not underutilized. And so this is one way that we were thinking about, how can we support the whole early learning field in a way that EOEL can actually do something to assist them, because right now we can only utilize our pre-plus contracts on DOE campuses. And then next, I'm going to pass this over to Department of Human Services.
Thank you. Happy to share about our Preschool Open Doors program on behalf of Director Betts and highlight our exciting months ahead of us, which first we'd like to thank our Lieutenant Governor and her team and our legislators for supporting our department last session and passing Act 171. So thank you. This allowed us to focus on changes and effectuate the expansion of Preschool Open Doors program for the 2024 to 2025 program year. If I may, I'd like to highlight some of the changes. The addition of 3-year-olds will now allow families up to 2 years of preschool prior to their child's entry into kindergarten. The increased income eligibility limits, which will result in more families being eligible for Preschool Open Doors. So families that may have been over income in previous years may now qualify if they have eligible 3 or 4-year-old children and need help with tuition assistance. And we also lowered family co-payments to 0 to 7% of the family's gross income, and that will result in having families to pay less out of pocket for childcare. And our increased monthly childcare subsidy amounts to cover the costs of providing high quality childcare. So our department did not hesitate to make these changes for payment rates or family co-payments so that we may provide some relief from the financial pressures families often face. We listened to the concerns from our early learning community, and we are pleased to report that the public hearing resulted in positive testimony, and even applauded our department for hearing the concerns that were raised. We do recognize that our work will continue. We are off to a great start with Preschool Open Doors, and we'll move forward with other important amendments as well. If I can just go back to the timeline. Please be on the lookout for our department's launch of the 2024 to 2025 Preschool Open Doors application period. So this month, our Hawaii Administrative Rules will be adopted on the 12th. And from there, we're going to open our application period starting the 16th to continue to March 28th. And once that application period ends, our staff will notify our eligible families. And this is all in preparation for July and the start of the 24-25 Preschool Open Doors school year. And with that, our eligible families will receive assistance through June of 2025. Next slide, and I'll turn it over to Dana.
Okay, so through the American Rescue Plan Act, which was signed by President Biden in March 2021, DHS is able to provide financial relief and support to childcare providers and families. From December 2021 through November 2023, DHS was able to disperse close to $72 million in stabilization grants to a total of 616 facilities. That included preschools, infant and toddler centers, before and after school centers, after school programs, and family child care homes. All employees of child care centers and homes received a $2,500 staff retention bonus award. And in addition, caregivers also received a $1,000 mental health and wellness award. Infant and toddler centers were provided a higher operating base award rate than the other types of services, and providers identified in a specific social vulnerability index range they were also provided a higher operating base award as well. Since the stabilization grant program came to a close on November 29th, 2023, we are still working on final statistics and the impacts that the grant had on staff retention and the number of facilities that closed their doors during the grant period. But preliminary numbers show that over 3,000 employees received the staff retention bonus and 2,000 caregivers received the mental health and wellness award.
I'm going to speak to CRSA, or the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations. So our department received a grant of roughly $33 million, and the CRSA Act offered new flexibility to meet the needs of childcare providers and families, which is where we focus our attention for this grant during the COVID-19 crisis. One such flexibility was serving essential workers, regardless of their income, and covering co-payments for all eligible families. We also increased the subsidy rates to cover higher costs of providing care during the pandemic, and paid subsidies based on the child's enrollment rather than attendance with an eligible child care provider to secure the child's slot. So the department, we were able to assist 2,083 children whose subsidy was funded with CRSA.
And then through the supplemental CCDF discretionary fund program, which just began, applications for the grant program opened on January 2nd, 2024. DHS is committed to ensure that all $44 million is provided to eligible licensed preschools, infant and toddler centers, before and after school facilities, after school programs, and registered family child care homes by September 30, 2024. The focus will be on supporting staff retention and recruitment efforts and providers' operating costs. For Maui providers who lost their facilities and are seeking new places to operate childcare, they will also have the opportunity to apply for this grant. Next slide, please.
So being there for our Maui families and providers, the child care subsidy funds. So DHS supported families impacted by the Maui fires to get help paying for childcare with temporary rules for our child care subsidy program. That set aside a number of the usual requirements, such as the no income eligibility and work activity requirements. Families had the opportunity to apply for assistance by October 31st under these temporary rules, and our eligible families are now receiving 12 months of financial assistance.
My program staff and I met with Maui Center directors and family child care providers to discuss the impacts of the wildfire and to strategize ways that the existing facilities could possibly increase their capacity to accommodate more children. We met with 2 directors who lost their centers and who were trying to figure out next steps to find new spaces. We conducted a site visit with an applicant who is going through the licensing process now and is hoping their center can be licensed sometime this month, as soon as fire and county give their approvals. And we met with the County Department of Public Works to convey an increase in the shortage of childcare providers on Maui and the request for urgent county inspections of childcare facilities so that families can have more childcare options was coordinated. DHS is committed to working with not only Maui providers and applicants, but all providers and applicants statewide to address Hawaii's childcare capacity issue. Next slide. So last for DHS, we are designing a new workforce registry system that we're really excited about. We'll be retiring our current registry system. We've dedicated over $300,000 to design and implement a new workforce registry system. DHS and Patch are currently working with a vendor on the design. The system will store and maintain caregivers' profiles who are working or volunteering in DH licensed and registered childcare homes and facilities. Caregiver profiles will include but not be limited to data regarding their education, training, experience, and employment. The system will be public facing. So currently it's not. Providers would be able to access their training and education records and be able to manage their own profiles. We're excited for the new opportunities that a more up-to-date registry system will provide, such as being more efficient with our data and having data more readily accessible, such as tracking and evaluating the progress that Hawaii's caregivers are making in professional development.
Okay, so just to sum it all up, I think as LG had mentioned and as we've been discussing, it's really the collaborative partnerships that have really helped us as government partners as well as our private partners to really support children and families, especially during such a critical time as we're still trying to recuperate from COVID and reach some of our expansion goals that the state has committed to. I've been working in the field for over a decade now, and I don't think I've been more proud with the work that we've done as a collective field. So I'm really happy to be able to participate in this as a part of the Executive Office on Early Learning, but it's really been the collaborative partnerships that have been at the forefront of why we've been able to do this. And again, mahalo to you as legislators for helping us by appropriating funds and passing bills to support these efforts. I think our best investment will always be our youngest children and our families, so mahalo to you all for continuing to commit to that as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Members, questions?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dana. And so you know that I have been early on asking you folks for data regarding the $72 million spend. And I want to thank you folks for being able to facilitate that spend in that shorter period of time, because I know how much money, how difficult it is to be able to spend that much money, cover so much, and be required to spend it in that shorter period of time. So I want to thank you for that. But what I want to know is, after the Maui fires, has there been an increase in money so we could continue on with the subsidies that we had started during using the ARPA funds, the 72 million ARPA funds? You folks talked about 2 childcare centers being destroyed, right? So they're no longer receiving the ARPA funds because that ended as of November. Because of the fires and because of FEMA, do we have monies to help subsidize those 2 loss of childcare centers? Yes, no, and how much?
So we couldn't use the stabilization grants for those providers. But we do have our upcoming supplemental grant program that those Maui providers who lost their facilities from the wildfire and that are looking to operate new childcare centers, they would have that.
How much? You don't know?
to apply
I
for
see
the
Scott
grant.
Nakasone there. How
Oh,
much?
this is, well, it's a total of $44 million for the supplemental grant program.
Specifically only for Maui?
No. This is just the entire supplemental grant program that we just started the application period on January 2nd. But do you want to talk about that special subsidy period that you had in your slide?
For our Maui families? For
Yeah,
the
I mean, because I'm hearing a lot from Lahaina. You know, we've lost those child care centers. They cannot move back because it's an environmental hazard right now. So we need to build, but we don't know where. And what kind of subsidies are we giving them? I mean, other than this 44 million block grant, it sounds like to me that there should be. No, you don't know?
that part.
Okay, get back to us.
Thank you. If we can.
Thank you. And following up with the $72 million, when do we expect the report to see how well this $3,000 stipends have been? Because we know during the COVID era, a number of child care centers closed down, not before even the Lahaina fires, right? So how many were we able to prop back up to fill that up? And I don't know whether or not Lieutenant Governor knows. I want to know about capacity. How many more child care centers do we need to create? How many more slots?
So our stabilization grant program was completed on November 29th, 2023. We are working on, getting information from our dashboards for that grant program. We'll be able to tell you the result of, how many providers lost their staff even during that grant program, how many providers closed. But we don't have that information yet. I would, if I can make a projection of maybe within the next month. Our system contractor is working on, it's the same system contractor, so they are working on this next grant program as well, the supplemental grant program. So I'd have to, they are working on getting that data for us for the stabilization grant program, while they are also working on the technical part of the system for this supplemental grant program. So I will ask if we can get that information within a month.
Okay, so I'm sorry. And the reason is we've got like Terry Locke, we've got other people like Zeisman, I remember. They're asking us legislators for monies for slots and subsidies. So I want to know whether or not we do have these monies available to satisfy it, and whether or not these subsidies do in fact help, or should we target it, especially now where we don't have that much money? Should we target areas specifically like in Waimanalo, or is it because, and we're not going to know until we have the data, right?
I will get you a breakdown by county, the amount that we dispersed.
And how many much money is coming in, right?
As far as federal grants. So we just have the $44 million in supplemental grants that we have to liquidate to providers by September 30 this year. But we got a fiscal waiver extension, right, for, I don't know. I will follow up though and let you know how much.
And especially disaster ones, because Maui is hurting.
Yeah, our federal partners are aware. They are, we meet with them monthly. We do provide them with reports of our efforts to support not just Maui providers, but providers statewide. They have talked about providing supplemental funds specifically for Maui providers, but they haven't said anything more about that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? No?
Madam Chair. Thank you. Thank you, DHS, for being here. I know that DHS has been involved on the ground on Maui from the beginning. We appreciate your folks' efforts. Can you talk a little bit about the office's engagement with the West Maui community, and how the temporary waiver exemption of the rules has helped expand coverage for those in need?
So you heard about that. Okay. So we conducted 3 visits to Maui. We met with providers. We met with the 2 center directors at lost their facilities. We've conducted site visits at possible new locations. One was a shopping mall in the Lahaina area. We really want to, we've expressed our support and our efforts to work with providers that are interested in either increasing their capacity so they can serve more families. We are working with that one applicant on his license to operate a preschool facility, not in Lahaina, but outside of Lahaina. And this is, we would be using our provision in our admin rules under the demonstration project provision, which waives certain requirements. So as long as a provider can come up with a plan to show that they are still meeting health and safety requirements, we do take that into consideration and would provide a provisional license to operate a demonstration project. So it gives providers alternatives if they're unable to meet certain admin rule requirements, just as long as it didn't jeopardize health and safety. I'm trying to think what else.
And do you know how long, in fact, you're going to grant that waiver? I'm thinking about some of the providers on the west side planning to see if they're going to go back to that area. That would be helpful information.
So we have to work with the county Department of Public Works. Right now, there is that the mayor's emergency proclamation, which waives the certain building inspections. It's my understanding that as long as the mayor has it in his emergency proclamation to waive certain building and zoning requirements, providers would still have to show that they are still meeting those county code requirements if the mayor decides to remove that provision in his emergency proclamation. A provider would be licensed for, an initial provider would be licensed for 1 year at a time for the first 4 years. And then after 4 years, then they would have a licensing period of 2 years. So a demonstration project technically could not be issued past 1 year.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. I appreciate all of your input and the report on your work. Please, if you email anything, if you can also email it to my office and I'll distribute it to the committee members. We're going to take a break right now for very quick, just 5 minutes to serve yourself some lunch if you're hungry, and we can eat as we listen to the next group. And for those who are speaking, you can serve yourself before, after, whatever works for you. But yeah, so we'll take a recess for just 5 minutes because we're running a little behind, and get some lunch to sustain us while we learn. Thank you, everybody. We are calling back to order, continuing our joint info briefing. And next up, we have some of our local experts that are talking about the challenges parents and early childhood professionals are facing. And I would like to introduce Dr. Terry Locke from the University of Hawaii at Manoa College of Education. And she will manage this section and introduce some of our other speakers.
Yeah. Aloha. Thank you so much for having us today. And we're so pleased that we can offer our local experts expertise on some of the topics around challenges and maybe some solutions. So again, I'm Dr. Terry Locke from the University of Hawaii, and we have a wonderful panel here today. I'm going to have them each introduce themselves, their role, and then at least bring up one challenge first. Each of them will have about 3 minutes to do so. We are running out of, we're going to be shortening this section. So I'll just keep our panelists focused on the time that we're going to be, instead of 45 minutes, we'll be doing this in 35 minutes. Okay. So first of all, I want to introduce Malia Suchia, and she'll go ahead and use the mic and be able to introduce herself, her role, and then one of the challenges that's top of mind for her.
My name is Malia Suchia, and I grew up in your district, and my mom and all my sisters live in your district, and I'm very, very thankful, and I'm a mom of 5, and I have been very much immediately and by extension affected by the programs that you are supporting, so I am very, very grateful, very thankful. And I think right now I really am focused on the blessings more than the challenges, because we've come so far, and I'm so thankful for that. I think really the biggest challenge I feel right now as a mom, as a sister, is just how do we do more? That's all. Just how do we keep doing more of what we're doing, because what we're doing is great, and how do we just keep doing that? Yeah.
Am I not? I'm going to introduce Megan McCorston, and she'll introduce herself. She's at the end here on this panel.
Hi there. Thank you for having us. I'm Megan McCorston. I'm Chief Executive Officer of Seagull Schools. We've been in Hawaii for over 50 years, serving students ages 18 months to 5 years. Of course, COVID presented major challenges to our existing program, but we've experienced a great recovery. But one of the big challenges going forward, since our mission is to serve middle to low income families predominantly and increase access and affordability to education for those families, one of our biggest challenges is just how do we continue to pay teachers what they really deserve? And as we've seen, they work double, triple time during COVID. They really don't get paid what they deserve. And how do we keep prices low? How do we keep our price point? We're among the lowest tuition rates in the state, and we're very proud of that. We work really hard to maintain that. So we really appreciate your support to Preschool Open Doors. About a third of our families are on some kind of subsidy or scholarship, and we want to make sure we can continue that mission. So thanks so much for your support, and I'll pass it over.
Okay, our next panelist is Vivian Eto, and she'll introduce herself.
Aloha, and thank you so much for the opportunity to share information with you all. This one, okay. There we go. I am with Early Childhood Action Strategy and serve as the strategy and project management lead there. But I'm with you here today as a member of the compensation design team, which was something that emerged out of the RAND Early Childhood Educator report that was issued in 2022. And so as a member of that compensation design team, really the challenge that I'm hoping to be able to inform you all about today is really our workforce shortage and the workforce compensation issues that we face here in Hawaii. The median salaries for our early childhood educators range from $13 to $17 an hour, which is well below the estimates for living wage, around $28.50. We have incredible shortages in our workforce that are really restricting the capacity of our community-based childcare programs. We're seeing decline in enrollment capacity, as Megan referred to, with our workforce shortages. And that's, of course, impacting access for our families to be able to get their children into our childcare programs. The other hat that I wear that I want to just mention really briefly is that I convene a work group on infant-toddler needs. And when we talk about workforce shortage and workforce compensation issues, those issues are even more acute when it comes to our childcare needs for our infants and toddlers. Our infant and toddler workforce earn on average 22% less than other workers in the field, and turnover rates are almost double what they are for programs that operate just preschool care. So, acute needs.
Thank you, Vivian. We'd like to also, the next panelist is Deb Zeisman. I'd like her to introduce herself and those top challenges that she feels that we're faced with.
Good afternoon and Happy New Year. Deborah Zeisman with Hawaii Children's Action Network. We are a state-level nonprofit. We represent the voices of around 7,000 family advocates all over, probably from all of your districts. And we work on a wide array of child and family issues, but largely we generally represent the interests of working class families, so like our ALICE families, and childcare, early learning, expanding access for all to have affordable, high quality early care and learning has been a priority for our organization we celebrated 25 years this last year, so the entirety of the 25 years. And let's see, a challenge in the 25 years. Well, it's lovely to see the great momentum. I think we are excited about the momentum that is growing both here and around the nation. I think the challenge is, as others folks said, looking at investing in our workforce, thinking about how we will do this investment long term. This is not one time thing and we do it and we're done. And honestly, treating early care and early education as part of our infrastructure. The way we think about K-12, the way we think about police and fire, that it is a needed and necessary part of our community, taxpayer-funded infrastructure, and we need to treat it as such.
Thank you, Deb. Also, I want to mention that Vivian mentioned the report, the RAND study. We had hoped to have a 4-page summary for you today, but we were unable to get that. But we will send that forward to you because it's a much larger document. Again, it was done in 2022, and this is in the report. There is a roadmap for our state, and so that's why we have a design team that has really been developing, looking at the various options across the nation and how we can move forward. So just want to clue you in on that. The next question we want to address is really, again, thank you so much for all the wonderful support. But we also want to just talk honestly about some of the effects of the expansion that's happening around us. So the question to our panelists is, what effects has Hawaii's recent investments in the expansion of school-based pre-kindergarten program for 3 and 4-year-olds, how has that impacted you in your particular role? So I'm going to start this portion with Megan, and you've already heard that she's also representing many other childcare providers, center-based programs in our state.
Thanks, Terry. I should have mentioned in the beginning, too, I also serve on the State Early Learning Board. So, and previous to this job, I worked with the state schools, state charter schools. So I'm a big believer in school choice for families in Hawaii. I think it's critical. We all understand that. Big believer in both public and private options, high quality schools for families, regardless of the price tag, right? So obviously this has shifted things for us. I think the rapid expansion of the public pre-K does bring into question some sustainability issues for some of our community schools. And, you know, several have been in the news for closing recently. So that's always really disheartening to see schools that have been around for over 100 years sort of closing their doors. But as I said, I'm a big believer in school choice, and that's why I'm doing this work. I think that Siegel Schools, for example, offers a model of education that is fundamentally different. We offer longer operating hours. We offer a year-round calendar year. So I think that what we're seeing is that a lot of our working families, we can't even accommodate their needs. Like, we served a lot of essential workers during the pandemic. Many of them needed hours long beyond our operating hours, which, we can't afford to do that. But just to share that, I think going forward, we just need to make sure that we're sustaining both high quality private and public options for our families. So I think obviously there are ways we're going to be affected. We also want to make sure that we retain our highly qualified workforce. We are very lucky that we've had generations of teachers and children come through our doors, and we want to sustain that. So, yeah.
Thank you, Megan. I'm going to turn it over now to Vivian.
Thanks. And I'll just speak to impacts that school-based public pre-K expansion can have on our Head Start programs and our family child care homes. Our Head Start programs are really designed to serve our most vulnerable of families, our lowest income families, and one of the wonderful assets of Head Start programs is that they provide comprehensive services, including health and intervention-related supports, and certainly family support and engagement services. And so one of the impacts that expansion through the public schools can have on Head Start programs is, of course, impacting their enrollment of 3- and 4-year-olds, which can create some jeopardy with their federal contracts in terms of their ability to maintain steady enrollment. Loss of teaching staff, of course, can be a common impact, especially with our Head Start and early Head Start programs being nonprofit agencies who cannot compete necessarily with the wage scales and salaries that can be offered through the public pre-K system and EOL system, charter school system. And then to some degree, there can also be uncertainty around facilities and space in that Head Start can be an operator on some of our school campuses, and to the extent that there becomes potentially competition for putting a new publicly funded EOEL classroom where there may already be a Head Start classroom, that can create some issues and dynamics. In terms of family childcare, some similar impacts there in terms of enrollment, where family childcare providers who are serving preschool children can be impacted. And then really pressures in terms of how to adapt services with the loss of children. Family childcare providers really need to be considering how to adapt their services to serve younger children and to offer wraparound care before and after school for preschool-age children, to bring in more school-age children. And for family childcare operators, many of whom have sort of limited business and administrative capacity and resources, that just creates a complicated financial calculus and a business strain in terms of figuring out how to adapt their programs and their services to the changing community need.
Thank you, Vivian. And we'll move on to Deb, who'd like to hear your thoughts about the impact of public pre-K.
Overall, I think amazing that we're seeing the expansion, right? We're seeing investment that we have not seen in my time in this work, which is phenomenal. And so we thank you all for that investment and looking forward to what we need. As Jordana said, I think we all agree that there's no better investment than that in our youngest children, whether you're looking at the numbers or incarceration rates or just what it means to be an amazing human in this society. So we are glad to see that expansion. I think from where we sit, we want to make sure that we're looking at the forest, not just the trees, and keeping an eye on the entirety of the system. We don't want to see children just moving from spot A over to spot B, right? We need to see growth in the entire system, which where I sit means we need all of the areas operating and maximized, right? We need to see family childcare maximized. We need to see our group childcare, so centers like Megan has, and our publics to see growth and not just moving things around. That's been a thing we're kind of taking a look at. The other thing that I know we are paying attention to is to make sure that the programs we're creating with public dollars on our charter school campuses and our DOE campuses are accessible to families. We know they're affordable because they're free. But for example, my children are both now school-aged in our wonderful public schools. But my family would not have been able to participate in the public pre-K program because both my husband and I work. And we could not have picked up our children at 2:15. My daughter is in A+, right? My elementary school H1. And I need summertime care because most of us who work do not get summers off. And so it would not have worked for us, but there's no way we could have actually participated. Even if I wanted a high quality environment for my children, there is no way I could have signed my kids up for a public option because we do not have, so we need to be figuring those pieces out as well so that families are able to participate and go to work, because we're looking in the realistic side of what do families need. I know I'm looking at Rep. LaChica, right? Like, I need a place I can have my kids in from 8 to 5:30 pretty much most of the year because I got to go to work. And so does my husband. Right? He's a county employee now. I don't think he can take those kids to, well, he does when school's off, but down to Honolulu Hale, right? You all know I've had my kids here in hearing rooms when school is off. So it's we have families that work. And so how to make sure the programs fit those needs.
Thank you, Deb. Move on to Malia.
Thank you again. How has expansion affected me as a parent and early educator? So for me, the biggest impact is that my sister, who moved away when she had her baby because she couldn't afford childcare, is moving back home because he can go to public pre-K. And she has a job that allows for that, so she can pick him up at 2. So that's amazing. That's an amazing blessing that my sister gets to come home. For myself as a parent, and I also did childcare for about 20 years, family childcare, group childcare, infant toddler for about 20 years. And I don't, because I have 5 kids and you can't feed them on that wage. But what it does for me on a positive side is, although it does present challenges that we need to be intentional in considering its impact on the community level, it does offer a potential for somebody who is considering getting into early childcare that they could teach in a public setting and possibly support their family. And so for me, that kind of creates a cell for my younger ones, cousins and otherwise, to get into education. And, really my hope is that all the settings will be equally supported, finances and otherwise. But for the immediate term, asking them to go into community-based is just not even a reasonable ask. But through the DOE side, at least, it could be a consideration and then something to be built upon. So for me personally, I feel like it's been a positive effect that can be built upon and expanded, and I'm grateful. So, yeah.
Thank you, Malia. We're going on to the third question, and we talked about preschool open doors earlier today, and I think we'd like to hear from the panelists about the effect of the changes going on in preschool open doors and how that might be affecting their role. So we'll start off with Malia, and this one is, I'm only giving you about a minute.
Okay.
And
1 minute. I have 5 kids. I could never qualify for preschool open doors. My eldest is going to college. My youngest is 3. He's late born. He's going to be in preschool for almost 4 years. It's very expensive. And so not only can I now potentially qualify for the upcoming year, and that helps me send my little one to preschool, I can potentially also afford college a little more now. So that sends my big one to college as well. So it is a huge impact, huge impact for me.
Thank you, Malia. I'll turn it over to Vivian.
I'm thrilled to speak to the reduced copayment that was passed with the rules changes. A lot of families, even if they were eligible for preschool open doors, could not necessarily still pay the required portion of the copayment to participate in preschool open doors. So that reduction of the copayment to 7% of gross income is a huge deal. And it really actually meets the federal DHHS benchmark for affordability. So we're really thrilled to see that in place.
Thank you, Vivian. Deb, your turn.
Ditto the last two, but we think this is a major step forward, especially for the Alice families. Remember, an Alice family of 4 is folks making up to around $100,000 a year who often may not have qualified prior. So the age expansion, income, there's a lot of good things. And I would just give major props to DHS. I don't know if DHS and moving things so quickly that things are going to be unrolling. I mean, we said kudos to them for moving as fast as they have to try to move this out. We'll talk about this later, but I think one of the things we're bringing to the table this coming legislative session is to really think about if a family does get now preschool open doors, because more families will be having that funding, that they're able to find a spot. Like that's the next step. So it's like demand and supply and how we balance them out. So fabulous, though. Fabulous, amazing movement forward.
Yeah. Thank you, Deb. And Megan, if you have any comments on
Yeah, I'll
next
just
step.
piggyback onto what you all said. We share your enthusiasm for the amazing work you guys have done to increase the preschool open doors funding. That is so critical. Even in the private sector, a third of our 800 families that currently attend our 5 schools rely on that money. They don't come. A lot of our families, especially on the west side, do not come to our locations unless they have some form of subsidy or scholarship. And so we know how critical the money is. So we do also appreciate the attention to accredited schools, because we also believe that quality early education should be affordable. So we appreciate the attention to that, and I hope more parents become aware of what an accredited school is and how important that is when they choose a school. We also, of course, appreciate the inclusion of 3-year-olds. So this is going to help a huge number of our families hopefully access some of our spaces that aren't filled right now. Thanks.
Thank you. The next question, we want to, I'm changing it a little bit, but it's what do we need to do to continue to prepare, recruit, and retain our workforce, our early childhood workforce? And so we'll give a few more minutes for each person. So Malia will go first. Go ahead, Malia.
It's me again. Right now, preparation, as far as I know, the UH system is trying to come up with a number of new pathways, as well as alternative pathways for credit. I know that they're working with Patch so that PD can also receive college credit, because the problem is if you have like CDA or you have professional development, you know, on top of the ongoing hours, the CDA expires. You can have 15, 20 years of experience, but you have to keep going because they don't stay like college credits do. So that's one thing that I know UH system is doing that is very beneficial and helpful. New pathways as well. There's, if I'm not mistaken, they're developing like a 0 to 8, which is awesome, because then you can have a little bit of mobility. Like for myself, to go from infant toddler to preschool and then make the jump to do DOE is almost, I don't want to say impossible, but it's very challenging. But there's the new programs that are coming out to kind of address those problems. So I feel like continuing to be creative in coming up with solutions for those new types of innovative pathways, as well as ways to qualify and meet college requirements, DHS requirements, I think is something that we could definitely continue to build upon. Retain, of course, it's a money issue. That's really what it is. We want to work for love, but we cannot. I would still be in preschool. I love it so much, but it's just not realistic. So I really think that's just a money issue. And recruit has a lot to do with just the marketing, the messaging, because I think people will do it for love and they will do it out of heart. Nobody becomes a teacher to get rich. And so I do think that there is a component to that, but we have to be realistic in regard to our cost of living and wages. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Malia. We're going to turn this over now to Megan to say a few words about any new ideas and solutions around recruitment, retention, and preparation.
I don't know if I have any new ideas. I think you're the one who's leading on those great ideas. But, it is a challenge. The infusion of ARPA federal funding over the last few years has been life-changing. I can't express that enough for our faculty and our workforce. That bonus, the retention bonus, may not seem like a lot, but for a preschool teacher to get a couple $1,000s as a bonus was unprecedented. I mean, tears in their eyes after working through COVID and all the rest, putting their health at risk, living in multi-generational households, putting their families at risk. This was a sign of appreciation, and we hope that we can continue doing this. At Siegel, we try to offer bonuses as much as possible. We try to keep up with increasing salaries year after year while maintaining low tuition rates. And that is such a big challenge, especially as we see the federal funding right, start to disappear. So how do we keep that going? How do we keep the focus on retaining our talent, giving these children a high quality education at affordable rates? We would love to reimburse them for their education costs, even a CDA. It's on the backs of teachers to renew their CDAs. So there's just all kinds of financial costs as a preschool teacher, which is just so difficult for them to manage on their salaries. So whatever we can do to support them and provide more career pathways, which I know Dr. Locke is working on. We are worried about the number of graduates we're not seeing come out of higher education institutions, community colleges in this field. So who's going to replace the wonderful teachers and school directors who've retired during COVID? We don't have a pipeline of steady teachers, so we're working on that internally to make sure that we're doing that work. But we would love to partner more with higher ed and perhaps the public sector as well in figuring out these solutions.
Yeah, I do want to clarify. I know we've used some acronyms. So CDA is a Child Development Associate. It's really an entry level and all of our community colleges that offer early childhood education offer that particular credential. I'm going to turn it over to Vivian to say a few words about this question.
So when it comes to early care and education workforce, we often use a water bucket analogy in terms of the pipeline of water, pouring water into the bucket. And with that pipeline, we're really talking about the recruitment and teacher preparation efforts, and we have some really exciting things underway in the state with the stipends and the scholarships and all of that helping to funnel water into our water bucket. But we have a huge hole leaking water from the water bucket in terms of retention of the professionals that we're bringing into the field through that water pipeline. And that retention issue really has to do with our compensation issue in terms of wages and benefits and working conditions for our childcare and early education staff. We are really needing to employ some new initiatives to supplement wages. Our ARPA funding that has supported bonuses and stipends for our staff is ending this year with the last wave of supplemental dollars. We need to be looking at creating a longer-term supplement program and working towards salary scales and salary parity with our public preschool programs and public schools to be able to achieve stability in our childcare and early learning workforce, access to benefits and career pathways to sort of provide that incentive to stay in the field in terms of longevity, places to go in your career, and a wage that can sustain your family here in Hawaii. A good job. We want to be working towards good jobs that will retain folks in the field. In terms of some solutions, besides those kinds of programs related to compensation specifically, operational supports that create more financial stability for our community-based childcare programs is a way of bringing in those resources so that compensation can be elevated for staff. I mentioned earlier in my comments about family childcare that business and administrative capacity is often limited in those kinds of settings, and so programs such as shared services models in which family childcare providers are networked and get centralized support with some of their administrative and business tasks and functions is a way to sort of infuse more stability into the operation of family childcare homes. But ultimately, we need to look at ways of bringing additional resources to our center-based programs and our family childcare homes in terms of supporting the true costs of operating quality care, which can come in the form of operational subsidies, creating more dependable subsidy enrollment, so more subsidy dollars, raising reimbursement rates and payments to our community-based programs for serving subsidy children. All of those kinds of dedication of resources are needed to be infused into our programs to be able to support a raising of compensation to help address retention issues.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to wrap it up.
Yes, we're about to wrap it up. I think we have just a few more minutes, and so we did have a handout for you, and maybe we can some more copies too. So the two of the things that we want to really highlight, we've talked a lot about the wage supplements, but if you can see by the handout, the two pieces of legislation, two important aspects that we're looking at for this coming session are the child care wage supplement and also the child care classroom contract pilot. So I'm going to have Deb talk about the classroom pilot. Deb, if you don't mind doing that.
Sure. Sorry, I thought Vivian was going to go first. Some of you already know. I've met with most of you already on it. So the idea is looking at a new model for more sustainability. So that DHS would provide contracts in a pilot to test out the model, but to contract for the provision of services by classroom. So as opposed to giving a family a subsidy and then family needs to go shopping, it would be the model that is used federally by Head Start, right? The national level, an RFP is issued. You have a service provider. They say we can provide X number of classrooms for a Y number of children. You're given, we've said initially at least a 2-year contract for this pilot, but ideally, it would be longer. Like you see with Head Start, you get a 3 to 5 year contract. You provide services. DHS can monitor, are you actually providing this many infants and toddlers? With the idea being a different model rather than having families have to go out and shop and find a slot. So to try to bring up the amount of money in the system to get closer to the true cost of care delivery, provide some more sustainability to the program providers, and be able to lift wages. That is the concept. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I'm just going to turn it back over to Vivian, just say any more, that if she has any more to say about the wage supplement, and then we'll just end with having each person say a comment.
I know many of you are familiar with the wage supplement proposal. So what I'll just share is that it is a type of initiative that's been implemented successfully across many different states and counties, Illinois, Louisiana, Minnesota, New Mexico, North Carolina, Wisconsin. And the data point I want to share with you is that even modest supplements have been found to reduce turnover in childcare and early learning programs by 25 to 50%. So there is good research on efficacy there.
What is modest?
In this case, they talked about $1,500 for the year.
Okay, so we're going to leave just with our last comments, and we're just going to go down the row. So, Megan, if you have any last things you want to leave with our legislators.
I just really I echo everybody here, appreciate the work of the state to really focus on early education going forward and expand access to our youngest keiki. That's so important to have a good start at life, and really want to work closely with the LG on a Ready Keiki plan and on a mixed delivery system of public and private, and appreciate your work on preschool open doors, because I think the subsidies are really key, and expanding that program is key to helping more of our families, working families that was referenced here today, access all types of education models, public and private, that may serve their diverse working needs. So thank you.
Ditto on the gratitude and appreciation. Because of my role working on the infant toddler work group, I just want to close with a comment about our littles. Just that there is a real symbiotic or dependent relationship between infant toddler childcare and preschool services. And the expansion of public preschool is incredibly exciting. And we just need to be really thoughtful and strategic about how that's done, because of the impacts that public pre-K expansion can have on preschool enrollment, which often subsidizes infant toddler childcare. And so we need to be really careful about unintended consequences in the infant toddler market based on preschool expansion. Thank you. Thank you so much.
I'm so grateful, that I'm grateful, and having family members that are directly impacted. Main thing I think I want to say is that, it takes a village, and I'm very grateful for your places and all the legislators, but I really want to say that it's not only human services and health and human services. It's housing, it's a number of different committees that could be working together on this childcare issue, because it affects everybody, economically, societally. It's a public good. And I just wonder, are there different ways that we could look at this through blended and braided funding and just this multi-agency kind of cooperative work that you guys have been working on? And how do we get more of that going and get other committees and funding involved? That's what I would most like to consider.
We know that we need to double the amount of workforce that we have to serve families with children birth to 5. And we're really committed to working with you to figure out, I think that the way to do that, the leading way, is to make sure those jobs are good jobs. They've historically been underpaid, assuming that Black and brown women are going to do under, sort of work for free and unpaid under the table work and things like that. And I think that day is over. It should be over. So good jobs that you would want your family members to work in, jobs that can put food on someone's table, jobs that men want to work in. We see the field is still overwhelmingly women, and I think it is largely due to pay. So.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you folks coming down. And if members have any questions, they can email them. We will provide your contact information. We have some people waiting online, so we're going to just move to the next group. But please get some lunch. I know you folks didn't, and the salad was really good. So please grab some lunch. And so next, I'd like to ask our NCSL hosts to come up. And they will be moderating the next group, which we have some experts from other parts of the nation coming to help us. So I'd like to introduce Jennifer Palmer and Patrick Lyons, and you folks can take it away.
Thank you so much. And thank you to our folks on the line. I want to hand the mic over to you in just one second, but I am duty bound to share a bit about NCSL and why we're here. We like to think of ourselves as the most trusted bipartisan organization serving legislators and staff for close to 50 years. We promote policy innovation, create opportunities for legislators and lawmakers to share knowledge, ensure that state legislatures have a strong, cohesive voice at the federal level. And we do this because we believe in the importance of the legislative institution, building connections between states and state lawmakers. And we know that when states are strong, our nation is strong. You've heard our elevator pitch. I want to do just that, connect you with some legislators from other states who are facing a lot of the same challenges. So I'm going to invite Councilmember White. I see you online. Really grateful to have you with us. Councilmember White is from the District of Columbia. He was elected in 2016. He was a sponsor of a big piece of legislation called the Birth to 3 for All Act, as well as many other parts. And since then, I believe that was 2019. So I'd love to hear from Councilmember White about DC's experience in expanding early learning opportunities, how they funded it. We're going to get sort of into the weeds of how you've been addressing your challenges. Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much for having me. I wish I could have joined you in person. I'm sure the weather there is much better than it is in Washington, D.C. But regardless of how I got you, I wanted to make sure I was able to, and really want to thank NCSL because they have been such a good partner since I've been elected on important issues like early childhood education across the country, and has been a great resource for us. So I want to share some really exciting things that we've done in the District of Columbia to get more workers into early childhood education. I heard the end of the last group to make it more equitable so that we're not taking advantage of primarily women of color who are doing some of the most difficult and important work that we have to do in education and elsewhere, and so that we can retain people and support our operators. So how the early childhood education legislation that I worked on came about is my first daughter, my oldest daughter, Madison, who's now 7, was born 2 weeks after I won my primary. And as somebody who is a first-generation college graduate, I know that the major difference for me and it has been education. That is the distinguishing factor between me and everybody else in my family that continue to struggle to this day. So I knew I wanted to work on something substantial in education. And I didn't know what I would work on until we had our daughter and we started looking for childcare. And I started learning very quickly that it costs a lot of money and that there are not enough slots. So I said, this is a place that I need to jump in. So as soon as I got elected, I convened early childhood education workers in the city to start to understand why we don't have more seats, more slots for children. And as I found out, for as much as we pay as parents, why the pay is so low. And I took from that meeting really what became the foundation of the bill that I wrote, the BEGIN Act, and stood for Bolstering Early Growth Investment Amendment Act. And I worked with another colleague of mine. We combined his early childhood education bill and mine into what is now called and what passed into law, the Birth to Three for All DC Act. What this bill does, it puts the District of Columbia on the road to universal early childhood education. So the way we do that specifically is first, we increase pay, not a little bit, but substantially. In the District of Columbia, because of this bill, we have a pilot project running now that we want to expand to the whole city that pays early childhood education educators the same as pre-K workers in our schools. So in the District of Columbia, we already have universal pre-K. Those teachers are paid on par with other public school teachers. So we are lifting the salaries of early childhood education workers from what was just about minimum wage to about $63,000 a year. That is substantial because what we find, I'm sure many other states and jurisdictions are finding the same thing. There are a lot of very talented people who are passionate about this work that is really difficult, who can't stay because they have to support their own families. So increasing pay is a way that we stabilize this workforce. Then we went a little further. We focused on mental and physical health for infants and toddlers. So this bill creates what we call healthy steps. It embeds in our early childhood mental health specialists an early childhood mental health specialist within pediatric primary care clinics. So the goal here is to make mental health supports accessible for families at pediatric visits from a child's birth through age 3. We also provide shared services for our providers. There are a lot of things like payroll that providers were saying to us, we have to pay for these things, but they cost so much and we don't have a lot of room in our budget. So we said, I think there are some things that we can cover by combining these shared services and really giving them more economic power. We created the Early Childhood Educator Pay Equity Fund. And so in 2022, this is a massive bill. It's very expensive. We have to pay for it piece by piece. In 2022, the DC Council saw an opportunity to finally fund one of the most expensive parts of Birth to Three. This is that pay equity piece. So we did it in our budget. We created a grant program that supports pay parity for early childhood educators. We created an early childhood educator equitable compensation task force to help us understand how to do this, because the degree requirements for our pre-K teachers in school are not exactly the same as the degree requirements for early childhood education workers. So we had to understand how we deal with some of the technical aspects like that. Some of the things that we are already seeing is increased ability to attract and retain people into the workforce. We're seeing lower overhead costs for many of our centers. What we're not seeing yet, but is the sort of part underlying this bill that I expect we'll see in the future, especially as we expand these services and programs, is improvements in our workforce, improvements in education outcomes, improvement in health outcomes. So the last thing I will say on this, because I want to make sure, I know you all are running a bit behind schedule, and there's some other exciting folks who are doing some great work. When we were working on this bill, and thinking, how do we grapple with the challenge of getting a bill this big passed with, a price tag as big as it is? So what I did was I reached out to testify. I reached out to some of the academic experts. I reached out to medical experts, but I also reached out to our business community through the Chamber of Commerce so that we would have folks who could testify on the medical reasons why we want to have early childhood education, the long-term learning and health opportunities that would be gained, but also from our business community. It has been well studied what the economic benefits are to the city, to our workforce, for jumping into early childhood education in this way. What I kind of glossed over, but just will repeat, one of the main reason we could pass this bill is because before I got elected, one of our former mayors, Vincent Gray, had already created universal pre-K, pre-K4 and pre-K5 in our city. That allowed us to go further and put ourselves on a path to early childhood and to universal early childhood education. So in a nutshell, that's what we're doing in DC. Writing the bill was complex. Getting the bill funded is still complex, but we're chipping away at it every single year. And I've enjoyed talking to and working with colleagues from legislative bodies across the country through NCSL to kind of see where they are in this process and see the progress across the country and see where we have some things that we can learn to push things along further in the District of Columbia. But long story short, if we can do it, every state can do it. It takes a lot of work, a lot of commitment, and a lot of money. So you have to be strategic and really play the long game. But luckily, we've been able to do that in DC.
Councilmember White, I want to make sure I'm understanding it right. The pay parity part is for educators, not just in pre-K classrooms. It's for educators of infants, toddlers, up to age 3, so that they're also in pay parity with K-12, is that correct?
100% right. The pay parity already exists for pre-K4 and pre-K5. The pay parity that we're implementing now as a pilot, but plan to expand, is for the early childhood workers at 0 birth to 3.
Thank you. And I know you said it was expensive and complicated. Can you give us a little insight into how you funded some of these?
Yeah, so the easy answer is that the District of Columbia, 2 things. One, we have had healthy revenues for a number of years, for a little more than a decade. Our population was growing, our businesses were growing. We're still growing, not at the same clip. But in addition to that, there was no way around the fact that we did have to raise taxes. It wasn't a significant, it wasn't a major, none of us ever want to raise taxes, so it's always significant, but it wasn't a massive tax increase. It was a modest tax increase that allowed us to fund this, but we did have to do a tax increase.
Thank you. Questions from you all?
Wow. We do have a long way to go. Thank you for that inspiring story.
Thank you for being here, Councilman. What was the cost impact, so we can have an idea as to what is the price tag for that kind of compensation parity?
The overall price tag, so Healthy Steps, the home visiting program, it's about $70 million overall. And the District of Columbia has a population of just under 700,000. So 70 million for pay equity, 1.35 million for Healthy Steps, smaller amounts for some of the other smaller parts of the bill, but that pay parity was the biggest one, and that was about 70 million.
Thank you, Councilman.
70 million for how many child care educators?
So we have. I don't know the exact number. We have We have 4,100 early childhood education workers in DC, but the number covered by that 70 million price tag, this is kind of the first step. Everybody is not yet covered. Let me circle back with you. I'll get that number to you.
And I have one more question, sorry. When you calculated the pay equity increase, did you also take into account the federal subsidies given to each parent that they could use to pay for the child care?
Not for the pay aspect, because we have a number, I'm sure you all in many jurisdictions have vouchers for parents to help them afford early childhood education. On the family side, the pay equity fund was only for the salary. So families are already using the federal money and local money for vouchers on that side.
So when you determined the pay equity, you did not take into account what the vouchers are.
No, because that money is already accounted for in the system as it existed before we passed this bill.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions from you all? Okay. One last question for you, council member. What is left, or if anything, within the Birth to 3 for All DC Act to implement and fund?
Quite a bit. Not massively, but we've done healthy steps. Home visiting program we have started. The salary is still a big piece. Again, we've started that, but we still have a lot of educators still left to cover. We're in the first stage of what is roughly a pilot program. One of the other big pieces that's left is to get to universal early childhood education. We have to create many more subsidies. That's another big price tag. The pay equity for educators and the subsidies is pretty for families is pretty sizable. Those are the biggest pieces that we have left. So we're hoping that over the coming years we can continue to chip away at this as we have.
Excellent. Thank you so much, council member. We really appreciate your time. I know it's evening. You're probably ready to go home. So thank you very much.
No problem. Thanks so much. I've enjoyed this, and good luck with everything you're working on.
Oh, I'd like to say hi, Councilman.
Oh my goodness, it's so good to see you. I was hoping I would get to see you, if only virtually. Yeah, doing great work over there in New Mexico.
Thank you. And our Deputy Secretary, Sarah Michelson, worked with you on the Birth to 3 Act. So we're happy to have the DC energy here in New Mexico, and learned a lot there. So thank you for your leadership. Sorry, Hawaii, I just need to take a point of privilege there. Nice to see you.
Thank you very much, Councilwoman.
So good to see you. Take care.
You too.
Thank you. Well, Secretary Gerginski, thank you for joining us and for that little segue. So next we're going to hear from Secretary Elizabeth Gerginski, and her Deputy Secretary Sarah Michelson is also joining, and they're going to tell us about sort of their state's journey in the last few years. I'm sure many of you are familiar. They've implemented a number of changes, and we're sort of looking at the comprehensive view of all of the early childhood milestones that they've reached in the last few years. So I don't know if you have slides, but you should be able to share if you do.
Yes, so. And I also want to acknowledge NCSL. My husband worked there for 12 years, doing early childhood. So this is very near and dear. And I got to travel with him to Hawaii when he did a legislative technical assistance. So this is good. And I got to be with the Lieutenant Governor in July at the Education Commission of the States meeting for Lieutenant Governor of Hawaii. So great to be here. I do have some slides I want to share. Let me get to the beginning. Slide share, make sure I'm view, slideshow. Make sure I'm in the right, am I in the right presenter mode, or are you seeing the notes?
We're seeing your notes.
Okay, swap presenter view. How about that?
There you go. Yep. Great.
Okay, great. Well, thank you all for inviting us to be here. I am the Cabinet Secretary for the New Mexico Early Childhood Education and Care Department. I was appointed in November of 2019. In March of 2019, the governor put forward a bill along with business leaders and advocates and legislators to create the Early Childhood Education and Care Department. So that bill was passed in March. They put in place in that statute a working group to really look at how they could make sure this department was ready to go effective July 1, 2020. So that's when they brought me in November. And I'll show you a little bit here about where we've come. So the governor in her first year created the Early Childhood Education and Care Department. In her second year, she created an Early Childhood Trust Fund, starting it with $300 million. That trust fund is now almost $6 or $7 billion. And then in the third year, the governor put her support behind a constitutional amendment where the advocates and early childhood educators and families had been working for 10 years to get an amendment, a constitutional amendment, to allow a portion of our state's $26 billion land grant to be used for early childhood. So I didn't do all those slides, but I just want to get you the sense. The first move was governance. How are we going to govern our early care and education system in the state? And then follow on that with how are we going to make sure that it has enough funding to achieve the vision that we have for the state. So before July 1, 2020, this is how early childhood was delivered in New Mexico. We had the Children, Youth, and Families Department, which is primarily our child welfare, juvenile justice agency, had many of the programs you're familiar with: pre-K, home visiting, child and adult care food program, child care assistance, as well as regulation and oversight, as well as our Head Start State Collaboration Office. You'll notice here we had New Mexico pre-K for community-based programs in this department. And on the far right, you'll see we had New Mexico pre-K delivered in school-based programs through our public education department. In the middle is our Department of Health, which had our Part C early intervention program through the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and a program called Families First, which was developed here in New Mexico, pre-managed care, and it was a perinatal case management program staffed by nurses. So all these programs were delivering prenatal to 5 early childhood services in 3 departments, multiple divisions across the state. And when we created the department, this is what we now look like. We deliver all those programs and services through one agency under one roof with all those funding streams, including the new ones that came online as part of Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham's efforts with the trust fund and the land grant permanent fund. I won't spend a lot of time here, but you can see that all that's spread across 3 agencies, different secretaries, different priorities, different regulatory constraints. Now we are able to manage and to do this work together. I'll just go back real quick. So you'll see that the other thing I want to point out is in our state, we have 23 tribes, pueblos, and nations. And so the department, the governor, and the legislature thought it was critically important, and we are so grateful that they created an assistant secretary for Native American early childhood education and care. So her role is to work with all the governors and the presidents of those sovereign nations to make sure that we are supporting their prenatal to 5 systems and helping them both with funding, technical assistance. We have identified in each of these orange boxes what we call a tribal liaison. So every program has a person in there dedicated to learning about the languages, the cultures, the traditions of each of the tribal communities and working in partnership with the assistant secretary. So the other thing we added was a chief health officer over here to the right. We recognize that we're working with children prenatal to age 5, huge impacts with our health community, and we wanted to make sure that we were able to support that. So we used our Early Childhood Comprehensive Systems grant that we were awarded from the federal government, and we were able to bring on a chief health officer. When we became together in July 1, 2020, if any of you remember, it was kind of a crazy time, but we worked virtually with all of our staff and we crafted this vision and mission. And from the beginning, the commitment of this new department is significant. The commitment to New Mexicans to create a cohesive, equitable, and responsive prenatal to 5 early childhood system that supports families, strengthens communities, and enhances child health, development, education, and well-being. So we know that to make that commitment, We have to be bold and we have to have a strong vision. And our mission has to reflect all the programs and services and the work that we're doing inside the department. And so it was important to staff that we had words like babies and toddlers and family driven in our mission. I often say this is not your, standard mission where you can memorize it, but it does talk about what our every day we come to work to optimize the health, development, education, and well-being of our youngest children, and doing it through a community-based approach that is family-driven. So what I want to show here is how governance matters and how funding matters, and the funding I'll talk about a little bit at the end. But just to share some highlights of what the divisions in our department have been able to accomplish in a very short time in the midst of a global pandemic. So just in the last, from 22 to 23, we have expanded access for childcare to 7,300 more children, with the largest being infants and toddlers. What I didn't tell you is that the other thing our state did was we immediately, which DC also did, because if you don't know, I was in DC working as the assistant superintendent of early learning. We changed the way we were setting our childcare assistance rates by using an alternative methodology. We said, paying providers what parents are able to afford is not going to get us to where we know we need to be, because the true cost of care is really out of reach for most families. So the reality is that we wanted to be able to pay closer to the true cost of care, and we made that change in 2021. In 2021. The other thing we did is we said, if we're going to expand how much we pay, we also need to make sure more families have access to that subsidy. So the governor first moved it to 350% of poverty, federal poverty, that families were eligible for childcare. The following May, she moved that to 400%, with families being able to stay on the child care subsidy up until 425% federal poverty. So right now, a family of 4 in New Mexico making $120,000 a year annually is eligible for free child care. This has been the game changer that's led to these types of results, with stories after stories of the impact that this has made for families, for children, for the people who work in the programs, because those rates that we're building reflect a higher compensation. Nothing like DC, but we aspire to get there. We also, as you can see, increased just the number of families we're serving, and we grew capacity. Many states are talking about how their centers are closing, things are happening, but the investments that we made have actually grown our capacity to serve more children. And we increased the number of high quality centers by 8% that are operating in the state. In New Mexico pre-K, last year, because of that land grant, that constitutional amendment, $140 million more dollars came into our agency budget, because the voters said, 70% of eligible voters said, yes, we should invest more in early childhood. This allowed us to make the most historic generational investment. 3,000 additional preschoolers. We're at universal for 4-year-olds, and we're going to head towards it. 50% of 3-year-olds, hopefully in this new budget year in FY25. But you can see there, we implemented pay parity within our pre-K rate, again with these new revenues, and extended the instructional hours. We're seeing more children enrolled in this longer extended day of 1,380 hours, which is almost full day, full year pre-K opportunities. And this is open to both our school-based programs as well as our community-based. Now, in reality, the school-based programs did not take up that extended plus option, but we are excited to see that 40% of our students are enrolled in that option. Program support. This is our friendly interterrestrial ambassador of care. It's the middle bullet there. We have something called the Early Show with Alex. This was our attempt. We're a new agency. All these programs and services had been delivered all different places, and people didn't know who was ECECD. What does this new department do? So we worked with our communication partner, and we have, as you can see, 5.6 million views, and this little Muppet has 23,000 new subscribers on YouTube. And he talks about home visiting. He talks about how do little humans develop. So it's a very fun and creative way for families to learn more about what are the programs and services we have and why is it important to have your child in a home visiting or a high quality childcare or enrolled in pre-K. So he has a spaceship, but he has real life guests come beam onto his ship. You can see that we have entered into 9 intergovernmental agreements with our tribes, pueblos, and nations. These agreements focus on everything from early intervention to family engagement, pre-K. We had a partnership with the Navajo Nation. Over 500 Head Start children are now getting a longer day and more days in the school year as a result of our collaboration. Policy, research, and quality. This is the other division. We used our federal relief money and we invested in childcare supply building. In just 38 awards, we're projected to create, many have been created, 2,200 new childcare slots across the state. We implemented the classroom assessment scoring system in our New Mexico pre-K, and as you can see, we are achieving very high scores. Again, I would put it to the fact that we have had very strong investments and a focus on a strong mixed delivery system that respects and honors parent choice. So in our department, we're looking at saturation. How many Head Start programs do we have in this part of the state? How many are there tribal? Are there Bureau of Indian Education? Are there school-based? Are there other community-based? We want to make sure that there's a mix. We also fund family child care for pre-K. So that's an important part of the role our department plays in a strong early pre-K mixed delivery system. Finally, a part of the statute that created our department said you must develop a 4-year finance plan. We said, great, and luckily we were able to work with the Prenatal to 5 Fiscal Strategies group. But really, we wanted to take a systemic approach to building this system. You know, what we know how much maybe it costs for direct services, but what is it going to cost us to deliver quality? What is it going to cost us to make sure we have the infrastructure in our department and in our technical assistance and professional development systems to ensure those programs that are delivering direct services have the support they need to meet our goals? So this really helped us address the fragmented and siloed funding approach that we all know we live with. And to really create a more unique and cross-sector prenatal to 5 system. So my favorite quote is, every system is perfectly designed to get the results that it gets. And so when we see results here in New Mexico, we're 50th in education, we're 50th in child well-being. Many of those statistics were what drove the legislature and the governor to say, we have to do something different. We have to create something in these early years that's going to change the trajectory for children and families. But that means we have a big responsibility. What is the system we're designing? Because right now the system we had, we're hoping that's going to change, was getting us results that were great disparities. I mean, we have a 28% child poverty rate here for children under the age of 6. For Hispanic children, that's 38%, and for our Native American children, that's 40%. That is not okay. This is the work that we have to do as this new department redesign how we support children and families in these earliest and most critical and rapid period of development. So we took a plan, and I'll show you some of just the outputs because you were asking earlier, how much does it cost? So we have those. Looking both, again, as I said, direct service and system infrastructure, and looking out what we're going to need in the next 4 years. The good news in New Mexico is we have this trust fund, so we can see the projections and we can plan. What can we do? How much can we expand next year? How many more children, and which children do we want to focus on first with which programs? So we can put the link to the initial 4-year finance plan in the chat for you if you want to take a look at that. We are updating it, and it's going to be very different. It's because we continuously improve our processes and we have better data. So, but each of the components here are components of what you need when you're building a system, thinking about how we're governed. Part of our federal relief money we use to create local early childhood system building coalitions. We have 15 of them representing 12 counties right now. We're about to seed another 2, and we want to continue to do that so that we have a way to talk both at the local level and the state level about what's needed. And we know that one size does not fit all. So we have to have that flexibility and that communication between local and state. Financing and fiscal, always assessing and planning. And then again, as I talked about, the system of professional development and technical assistance that is in place, we have it at the federal level for states, and at the state, we have it for home visiting, childcare, pre-K programs, so they can meet their goals and meet the requirements and all the things we need for families. And then, of course, always continuous quality improvement and monitoring and accountability. So here's the big reveal for us for 25 to 29, who we want to be serving, who we are serving, our projections for 25, and you'll see the color coding legend at the bottom. So the 28718 is childcare. The next is New Mexico pre-K, home visiting, and then FIT. Now we recognize that some of these children may be in multiple of those rows within that stacked bar chart, but we are doing our best to really understand that and building our system so that we can have both duplicated and unduplicated counts. But you can see our trajectory, where we want to head, and what that will cost us. So as here, what you'll see is the big blue is our direct service costs, and the quality supports and infrastructure are that top gray part of the stack bar chart. So we're looking at, and I just want to make a point, as you'll see at the bottom, our FIT and home visiting expenses, that money also, many of those services are being paid for through Medicaid. So that's all incorporated in here. But I just presented my budget this morning to the House Appropriations Finance Committee. The governor's executive recommendation is just a little over $800 million. And again, it's to keep that expanded eligibility for childcare, keep expanding pre-K to reach more 3-year-olds, and continue to focus on high quality, including a wage parity for infant and toddler teachers. So we're just beginning a 30-day session, and we're hopeful that that will be accepted and approved by the legislature as well. I will stop sharing. The final thing is my contact, and if anybody wants to reach me, but I'll stop sharing and take questions.
Thank you so much, Secretary Gerginski. Questions from you all?
Oh, I guess I have a question. It's such a new program, and you did so much reorganization. Are you feeling like you're already seeing the results? There must have, with that kind of investment, there must be a lot of pressure to show that it's working.
Exactly. That is exactly right. And we are seeing results. We're anxious to see, more of the child outcome data and how children entering kindergarten are doing. Our pre-K program has been evaluated by the Legislative Finance Committee a couple years ago, showed about a $6 to $1 for every dollar invested, a $6 return. Things like they were even able to look at high school graduation, but also special education. So we are hopeful to continue to see those kind of outcomes. Also with our early intervention program and our home visiting program, seeing more families not needing to continue on to special education because they've benefited from those programs. And then childcare, just as has so many benefits, both for families and for children. And we also want to begin to track outcomes for the workforce. Are we seeing less turnover? Are we seeing our workforce have a stronger sense of well-being and not having so much stress because of the work we've done around compensation and also quality supports? Sarah, is there anything you would add? Outcomes.
Hi, everyone. No, I think the highlights the secretary went over, being still relatively new and coming from other state government, I think the way we're able to both accelerate just the number of families and children we're serving has put wind behind our sails and working with our legislature and with the support of our governor. So just echo what the secretary said.
Thank you both so much for your time. Go ahead.
I'm just a little curious. Is Hawaii thinking about governance in any of the conversations? Just curious if the legislature's looking at governance.
I'm not aware that we were. No, we're just trying to expand our existing programs. But it is very interesting to see what you folks have done and how you've changed it, you know, as a possible model. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and I just, you know, I will get off my soapbox, but I do think that the governance has mattered significantly to the progress that we've made. The financing has been incredibly helpful, but the relationship and the intersection of all those programs being under one roof, as we say, or one agency, has, I think, made the most significant difference in our ability to be nimble and flexible and effective with community.
And I guess I would say that in terms of our governance structure, the Hawaii State Legislature statutorily articulated how we wanted the expansion to go. And so we have our structures incorporated into our various departments. We have an Executive Office of Early Learning, Department of Human Services, Charter School Commission. And so within the constructs of those departments, there are governance structures therein.
Yes, and we're also very union-based, so
Yes, we are too. Yeah, we are too. We have all unions.
So duties need to be collectively bargained, right?
I have a question. The amount of data that you shared and all the evaluation measures is like truly impressive. So with all the different kind of branches, you know, within that department, what is your approach to really driving within your governance structure clear, measurable data so that when you are coming back or asking for funding, you're able to really show like, you look, this is evidence that what we're producing works. And like, so what needs to be, I guess, considered, you know, from our perspective as we're looking for either reevaluating certain programs, restructuring certain things, or creating new programming?
Great question. Well, we have a set of performance measures that the legislature gives us for each of the programs that I mentioned. And so some of those are related to child outcomes. So for our pre-K, we do look at the kindergarten assessments that are done, and we link it back to children who participated in pre-K. We also look at, of course, with our FIT program, we use mostly the federal measures, the child outcome data. And in home visiting, we have a number of goals, but we're looking at access to prenatal care for families enrolled in home visiting, well child checks, also the parent-child relationship. We have assessments and measures that look at the relationship and how that's been strengthened by participation in home visiting. So we can send you, if that'd be helpful, Patrick or Jenda, our set of performance measures that we get evaluated on quarterly for all the programs. And then the area that we want to get better at measuring is the workforce. You know, how are these investments changing? We did do a survey of the workforce after we had an initial increase in their compensation. And, you know, it's kind of overwhelming just to see like how much better they felt, how they were able to pay their bills, how they could focus more on the children in the classroom. So that's an area that we're going to be embarking on in this next year, is to get measures about our workforce's well-being and be able to track that as a result of some of these investments. And then, of course, we also measure the number of programs that are achieving the higher levels of quality, and those are some of the performance measures. Sarah, would you add anything to how we're using data?
No, I would say we have a robust data division, and that's really critical to be able to track our success. And then I think the question around what programs would we need to add, I think bringing the programs together has helped us see where there were gaps, for example, to add new home visiting models to the state of New Mexico, or other programs to support infants and toddlers, or other sort of programs. So I think being able to do that full inventory, be together in one agency and see how that works together, was really New Mexico's solution to identifying gaps and building new programs or adapting existing ones.
One program we did build was an infant early childhood mental health consultation. That's just getting off the ground, and that's being again supported through that Early Childhood Trust Fund, because we saw the need in childcare and in pre-K for helping teachers have a better confidence and competence around developing children's social and emotional development. So that's a good point. We've also had a lot of strong learning by bringing like early intervention and home visiting together in the same division. Bringing that expertise of early childhood development from our early intervention team into the overall agency has been incredibly beneficial.
Well, thank you again, Secretary Gerginski, Deputy Secretary Mickelson. I know governance might not be top of mind here, but a lot of what you touched on, mixed delivery, workforce supports, expanding childcare, all of that was discussed earlier today. And so we thank you for lifting up an example or examples of how you've addressed those challenges. And thank you in advance for any follow-up questions we send your way or resources. So
okay, great. Good luck with everything. Nice to see you.
Yeah, sure. Okay, well, I'm very excited to introduce our next guest from the great state of Alabama. If you don't know, over the past decade, Alabama has done a lot of great work to expand their state pre-K program and has done so well with maintaining a high level of quality. So our friends at the National Institute for Early Education Research consistently rank Alabama state pre-K as some of the highest quality in the nation. And so I'm very excited to have Representative Terry Collins, who is also the chairperson of the Alabama House Education Committee, and also Dr. Jane Hume, who is the acting secretary of the Alabama Department of Early Childhood Education, here to talk about the work they've done in their state. Thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you, Patrick. It's good to be with you today. Saw Justin there too, and Justin and I have done lots of different conferences together, so good to see you. I know y'all have had a long day, but I do want to go over some of the priorities and some of the things that I think have made the pre-K and the early childhood program work in Alabama. And then Jan's going to go through some of the details when we get to that part with some great information from our Department of Early Childhood. First of all, I want to say that we started at a state level with quality. And I think that was the number one issue at that point. And then we've been growing capacity each year. I loved back in even 2011, I was elected in 10, and Jan Hume came to Morgan County and we worked together. So imagine getting 3 different school systems, Head Start, child care groups, and faith-based. When we started working on grants, everybody's leaned back around the table with their arms crossed. But by the end, they were leaning forward, they were working together, and we have truly grown in our county, our grants to where we are almost at capacity. So that is great. At the state side, I was wanting to work with it to build that capacity. And so here's some of the recommendations is that ours, like New Mexico, is a part of the Department of Early Childhood, which is under the executive branch. I think that's critical. I think one of the things that does that makes a difference is it lets them focus on quality. A lot of times our Department of Education focuses on compliance. And focusing on quality makes a huge difference. The other thing that I think is great, our Department of Early Childhood, they do an amazing job partnering with all the different groups that offer these early child services. We don't call ours HHS, we call it DHR, but it's the same really. And so it does a lot of our Head Start and our some of our child care, but they partner with them. We have home visiting with that group. We have it with child abuse and neglect prevention group and with early childhood. And so they partner with everybody to make sure professional development for our providers is high quality. And then they use their data to track how are those students that are getting these quality programs progressing as they go through school. And we've seen amazing results. So I think they mentioned a 6-to-1. I've heard as much as 9 or even 12-to-1 return on investment. So that's great too. The biggest thing I think that happened, and if you're looking for ways to grow your program, this might be your best one to look at, is that we had a nonprofit group that worked as an alliance, and they worked with the business community, they worked with educators, they worked with all different groups to push so that we would continue the expansion of the quality program. We've been doing that incrementally since 2010, and growing it incrementally has been able to help us keep that high quality, which I think is great. And as a legislator, I want to share a story with y'all as legislators. I think you'll see how it makes a difference. This alliance built such a good bond that at budget hearings, we would have early childhood present their budget request, then K-12 present theirs, then community college, then higher education. When early learning would present their budget, each one after that would be asking for their budget request, but every single one of them would ask that we would fund the early childhood as well. And that's what a strong alliance would do. And it makes a huge difference. I think those are the main things. I'm bad to jump in if Jan's talking or I think of something else, but I do want you to see the slides because they're very impressive. So Patrick, thanks for having us. I work all the time with NCSL, different groups, but I am very proud of all we've accomplished in Alabama, and Dr. Hume's been there from the very beginning. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Please stick on line for questions. But yeah, Dr. Hume, please go.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Collins. You've been such a great advocate for pre-K and for early childhood. We couldn't do this work without you. And so I'm going to try and share my screen without incident, I hope. Let's see. Y'all also may have gotten a sneak peek at our new logo for our 90 by 5 campaign that I can talk about a little bit. But we are, okay. So while we have grown pre-K, we have really, as Representative Collins said, really focused on quality. We want to make sure that particularly the workforce is a piece of this. Our department actually started off as the Alabama Department of Children's Affairs, and people didn't know what we did. And luckily, I think it was in 2015 or 17, Representative Collins, I think, sponsored the legislation that changed our name to the Alabama Department of Early Childhood Education. And our state pre-K program is called First Class Pre-K. It really is the biggest program that we operate, but it's allowed us to move into a lot of other areas on the birth to 8 continuum. So in addition to pre-K, we have the First Teacher Home Visiting Program, which we are not the only agency that administers home visiting, but we are the one that administers McV and the other federal funds that come in. We also are part of the governor's effort of Strong Start, Strong Finish. And Strong Start really is about that birth to 5 and birth to 8 continuum. Workforce development is something that we've grown in our department as really a system support as we build the system around early childhood. We house the Head Start Collaboration Office. We work very closely with our Department of Human Resources that regulates and licenses childcare and administers the CCDF subsidy, but we actually administer the quality rating and improvement system for childcare. And then we also provide family and caregiver supports and engagement. And so this is how we like to picture our system. To give you a little bit different view, this is how we look at the continuum. So First Class Pre-K, while it is the smallest capsule on this page, is actually by far the largest program that we have. But because of that program, it's really the fulcrum that's allowed us to move into these other partnerships. So we work with our Department of Human Resources on the Early Head Start Child Care Partnership. We work with the State Department of Education on the pre-K to 3rd grade learning continuum. We provide behavior supports, which includes mental health consultation and just general sort of behavior supports using a variety of different methods. We've got the home visiting, Head Start collaboration, QRIS, and then we also have an infant toddler mental health that spans the whole continuum. So these are the direct services that we provide, but it also takes a lot of system support for us to be able to do this. So we look at the workforce in terms of the pipeline, who's coming in. This is the real driver behind why we chose to do an incremental growth. We talked to states like Georgia and Florida, who had an influx of lottery money in those cases and fully funded pre-K in a year. And they said, we can't find the teachers. And so Georgia has really worked hard to raise the quality of their program, and really their quality is about the teachers. Florida went with a different model, but they both said, if you want to protect quality, you've got to make sure you've got the workforce. And so we haven't just started this. Actually, I think in 2011, when I got to the department from the advocacy group, we were starting to work with higher ed. Higher ed at that time was starting to close down early childhood programs and combining them with elementary education. And those students were not getting a full early childhood education. And so we really worked with higher ed to say, look, the demand's going to be there. We're growing this program. You know, don't close down your programs. In fact, we need you to grow those programs. And we still work with higher ed to do that. We also have added working with the Alabama Office of Apprenticeship, and we have an apprenticeship program for early childhood teachers. We were the first, I believe, in the nation, and I know we're the first education one based in Alabama. We have offered scholarships. We partner with the administrator of the Teach Scholarship Program. And we've also developed a program with the CDA group, and we are paying for early childhood educators to get their Child Development Associate credential. I think when I came on, y'all were talking about that with another person who was on the call, and it is expensive, and to maintain it is expensive. And so we are actually, thanks to the legislature, we're able to fund that work as part of our workforce development and the pipeline efforts. The other piece of our workforce development is we've got to take care of our existing workforce. We know that their education doesn't stop when they leave college or when they get that CDA. And so we provide professional development, and we invest a lot in coaching. About 7% of our budget for this program goes into coaching. So we provide individual professional development for lead and auxiliary teachers in the pre-K classrooms. And it's also the model that has carried over to our other partner programs, QRIS, EHS, CCP, challenging behaviors in childcare. And so it really has served us well, but it's also, we know, making a difference in child outcomes and in teacher practice. We also have the preschool development grant that we received, the one that was first awarded, I think it was December of 2014. Our commissioner at the time went up to DC to speak to that group. So we thought we had the award. We had a party, and we've had one ever since. So that PDG grant has really helped us grow pre-K and build the infrastructure around the system. We are, governance is different in every state, as you have heard. We don't manage K-12. We don't administer childcare. We partner with other agencies for programs, and we try and lift all of those up with the quality criteria. And we try and make sure things are aligned. So PDG has really helped us grow pre-K, but also helped us build the system of supports around that. Our pre-K program, we make sure that it's high quality early learning and development for 4-year-old children. We do not have a program for 3-year-old children, and that is a state pre-K program. All 4-year-old children in the state are eligible. It is not income-based. And we made sure to grow incrementally over a 10-year period to protect and maintain quality. So when we talk about quality, we use the National Institute for Early Education Research's 10 benchmarks. Now those got more stringent in about 2016. And we still meet those. And so we're very proud of that. We have met those now for 17 years in a row. Oh, I didn't anticipate that happening. Okay, here they are. So here are the benchmarks. They are really about the quality not just of the classroom, but of the teaching staff. And if you look at the 10 benchmarks, 5 of them have to do with that teaching staff. So that's why we've had such a large investment in the workforce. Our coaching, we have developed the standards around early learning and development. Our coaching supports curriculum and the standards. We have, requirements and policy requirements around the class size. We make sure that all children are screened and referred for services. And then we have a CQI system that we use class observation tool to really look at the quality, and always are trying to improve quality. But if you look at this teacher degree, teacher specialized training, the auxiliary teacher degree, staff professional development, and making sure we have that 1 to 10, or actually we have a 1 to 9 ratio, except for Head Start. We really focus on this checklist. We know this is the basic structure. These are our quality minimum standards. And so we expect that every program will meet these. It is becoming more difficult, even with the long-term investment in developing that workforce pipeline. And so we're realizing that we've got to do even more around that teacher credential and teacher specialized training. Just to show you sort of how we've grown since 2013, we were at 7% access. So 7% of Alabama's 4-year-olds had access to the first class pre-K program in 2013. We are now at 46% access. So 46% of our 4-year-olds can access the program. When we look at numbers in other states that have universal pre-K, we think we're pretty close to what the state pre-K needs to provide. We think the number is probably 50 to 55% would really get every parent, every family who wants their child to have a seat to have one. Our funding history follows the percent access. When I came to the department, we had, I think, about 32 employees. We could all sit around sort of a large conference table in a conference room and meet. We have grown so much that we can't all fit in one room in our office anymore. We have over 200 staff, and they're all located throughout the state. They really are providing our boots on the ground as far as coaching, making that connection with the teachers, and ensuring what's going on in that pre-K classroom really is not just meeting the minimum standards, but exceeding that, and that there's high quality interactions and high quality instruction. But our budget has grown from close to 16 million in 2013 to where the pre-K program is somewhere around 180 million right now. Right now, we fund on a classroom basis. And so we have 1,535 classrooms serving over 27,000 4-year-olds. So 46% of our population of 4-year-olds. Those 1,535 classrooms are actually located in 851 distinct locations. So there are several schools that have 2, 3, 4, 5 pre-K classrooms, depending on their population. And then we have 346 different organizations or grantees that we fund through. We are diverse delivery. We're in public schools. So nearly 3/4 of our program, our classrooms are located in public schools. We also allow childcare, private childcare, to provide first class pre-K. Head Start, we partner with Head Start programs to deliver pre-K for 4-year-olds. We have 55 that are based in churches, and we have 53 that are in community-based organizations. Also, when I started, we had no university or college-based. We're now up to 21. A lot of those are lab schools and are also workforce development tools. And so we're really excited that it may not seem like a big number, but the impact is huge. It allows a place for students to do their internship or to do their practice teaching in a supervised setting. And then we have 12 that we call private schools. It sounds interesting, but this is actually where the highest population, the highest need population is located, are in these private schools. So this is how we deliver pre-K. When I was listening to Councilman White, he talked about strategic and the long game, and I thought that really sums up what we've tried to do here in Alabama. We've tried to be very strategic about where we locate first class pre-K, and we realize this is not a short-term fix. We focus on outcomes both within pre-K, at kindergarten entry, and then we're looking at third grade reading as well. We know that our program has impacted absenteeism in a positive way. So the kids who go through first class pre-K are less likely to be chronically absent. We know that it's reduced special ed in the long term. I think the Secretary Gergensky talked about special ed. We may refer a lot in the beginning, but when you are able to address problems early or needs early, they're more likely to be effective and less expensive. So if we want to put it just in terms of dollars, that's one way to look at it economically. But more importantly, we know that it helps students long-term be able to be successful in school. We also know that we're closing the achievement gap. So while we are not a program that serves children in poverty, we are a program that serves all children. We know that this program closes that achievement gap for those children that we serve in poverty. And so that's a huge part of what we do and what we try to focus on. And I think that's it. So I'm happy to take questions or.
Great. Thank you so much. Do we have any questions, or Rep. Collins, do you want to say anything before we get to questions? Just a capper.
Well, just to remind everyone, our program is voluntary pre-K. So while children may not be in our first class pre-K, we may still have children that are coming from their own church program that also could be high quality. And so that's not necessarily, that's why we think if we get somewhere between that 50 to 65%, we're really at universal by that point. And I love that. I love the diverse delivery system because some families are more comfortable having their children participate in different type locations. I think that's really important. And also, I think when we renamed it, we actually set up and allowed graduating seniors to graduate with a credential for early childhood education so that they can actually, soon as they graduate from high school, go in to be one of the auxiliary teachers as quality. So those are the things I just wanted to add.
Questions,
and
anyone?
Representative Collins made that happen by working with not just us, but DHR, because there were rules that DHR had around the age of someone who could serve children. I think it was 19, had that lowered to 18 so that we could, for those students
Actually, 17.
Oh, 17. So
it is because like my child graduated as a 17-year-old. And so that's what we allow it for because of that.
So they've had the CTE program, that career tech program. They've got a CDA when they graduate from high school, and they can immediately start working in an early childhood setting.
And I have one more story while they're thinking of questions too, Patrick, is that when we talk about it making a difference in that return on investment, my grandson's autistic. And so he started as a 3-year-old in what they called a PALS class, which is a pre-K basically, but with half typical and half special. And he was there at the end of that 3-year-old. Then the next year, he was still 3, didn't turn 4 till later. He was really there almost 3 years or parts of 3 different years. And then we did hold him back in kindergarten, but we were in COVID and it was definitely the right thing to do. But he's doing great now. He is successful in school. He's doing a great job. And it just makes a difference when you can work with those children early.
Thank you. That's wonderful to hear.
Okay, thank you. Either a question for Dr. Hume or Representative Collins. You spoke with regards to your first class pre-K system that you overlay mental health supports. I was curious as to what is the interactions between those professionals and the teachers, and how is the operational flow regarding that. And in addition, not related, there was a bit of conversation around coaching and how that attributed a significant factor to your quality Was curious to see if the coaching happens for a period of 1 or 2 years, or if it's ongoing, and if so, at what frequency? Thank you.
So the mental health piece, we work in partnership with the Alabama Department of Mental Health and the Alabama Partnership for Children. And so we have people who specialize in sort of different areas along the infant early childhood mental health continuum. We also, the legislature has really has funded and pushed for mental health counselors in schools. We're learning to navigate that. We realize that there are some places that have lots of resources, and then there are some that have none. And so if I were to say anything, it's we're trying to figure out how to place the resources where they're most needed. And luckily, we work sort of on a geographic basis. We have 8 regions around our state, and so we're really nimble, especially within those regions. And that's very helpful. But we realize we're not the only game in town. And again, we're used to working in partnership with agencies, both state and local. And so that really has helped us navigate that. We have a great partnership with mental health and with the mental health providers that are funded through the State Department of Ed. And I will say, like operationally and administratively, what helps is we have monthly leadership meetings between mental health and our department. And so all the people are sitting at the table that are involved in this. And we've got also State Department of Ed, the people who are over mental health there. And so those kind of meetings are key. And sometimes we forget how important those are. We are like, oh gosh, another meeting. But really, that's a key to making sure that we're coordinating and collaborating and all on the same page. When we talk about coaching, our coaches are in classrooms at least once a month. And so they are touching base with that teacher. Their primary job really is to build a relationship with that teacher. We started that when a lot of pre-K programs were sitting alone in a school. And so that pre-K teacher was sort of sitting by themselves, and they had the principal that didn't really know what to do with pre-K, so they would have like kindergarten to 5th grade meetings of all the teachers, and the pre-K teacher was sort of alone. And so that coach was really a really important instructional partner. What we found is coaching is an effective way to deliver professional development and improve teaching practice. And so we have continued that. Our state really, we're unprecedented in the level of coaching that we provide. Other states sort of give us a hard time, like, do you have a coach on every corner? But what we do is our coaches have a load of about 15 to 20 classrooms, and they are in those classrooms every month. They're building relationships with the teachers. They're getting to know the students, and they are really that instructional partner. They're facilitating connections with other teachers who may or may not be in the building, and making sure that that teacher has the support needed to deliver high quality early childhood education.
I will add that we felt like the coaching was so important in our Literacy Act, which is our 3rd grade reading program. They have to be reading by 3rd grade in order to pass into 4th. And we have coaches for reading specialists doing that. We passed a Numeracy Act, and it also has coaching that will go in and work with classrooms, starting with those at-risk schools and those high-need areas. But coaching is critical.
I just want to say thank you. It was really interesting to hear about your quality measures and some of the efforts, how you measure it and how you invest in it. And I think sometimes we can be so focused on expanding access to care that that becomes secondary. And so I really appreciate that reminder and tips on how to do it. So thank you very much. It's an appreciation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Good to see you.
We even wrote into the legislation in literacy and in numeracy that's all those coaches could do, because we found they would have them do testing and do office work and do other things. And if you want to maintain the quality, then you have to have someone that's doing good coaching, providing good professional development for each and every teacher, especially those in those high need areas.
Thank you. Yet another good tip. Much appreciated. Are we ready to wrap it up? Yep. Okay, I really appreciate everybody, your patience in sticking with us. I found it really helpful. I appreciate our presenters that helped inspire us and teach us about what they have been doing. And it was so great to learn from and connect with our local staff here. I would be remiss if I didn't thank everybody who's helped make this possible. In addition to NCSL, we had our tech staff here. Everything went really smoothly, thank you. We had my office staff, Miki'ile, Ilima, and Sophia worked really hard, as well as Representative LaChica and Woodson staff also pitched in, so it was a real team effort, and I appreciate everybody so that we could have this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.